Now, as gunshots echo across the wind-swept, snow-covered reaches of the wild Northwest, Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, the breakfast cereal shot from guns, present the challenge of the Yukon. It's Yukon King, swiftest and strongest lead dog of the Northwest, blazing the trail for Sergeant Preston of the Northwest Mounted Police in his relentless pursuit of lawbreakers.
On King! On, you Huskies!
Gold discovered in the Yukon. A stampede to the Klondike in the wild race for riches. Back to the days of the gold rush. With Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, bringing you the adventures of Sergeant Preston and his wonder dog, Yukon King, as they meet the challenge of the Yukon. Hurry! It's the hottest thing in town.
Yes, now get cut-out models to build Sergeant Preston's famous Yukon Trail in your home.
The hottest offer ever made by Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice. The swell-tasting cereal shot from guns.
Actually, 59 Yukon Trail models at no extra cost.
Listen for details in a few minutes. Zona Howard had inherited a half-interest in a mine near Selkirk. The mine, which was known as the Dead Dutchman, was surrounded by an aura of mystery and evil legend. At first, Zona had laughed at the mine's weird reputation. But later, when troubles began piling up, it wasn't so easy to keep on scoffing. One morning, she was seated in the company tent near the mouth of the mine shaft. John Slocum, the hard-bitten mine foreman, was saying,
I tell you, Miss Howard, I've never put much stock in ghosts and curses or that sort of thing. But now, well, I ain't so sure.
For heaven's sake, Slocum, don't you start talking that way, too.
You go ahead and laugh if you like. But how else are you going to explain all these things that have been happening lately?
Exactly what do you mean by all these things?
Well, first that partner of yours, young Frank Drexel. He disappears as clean as though the earth opened up and swallowed him. And a whole shipment of gold dust disappears with him.
I'll admit I don't know what happened to Frank. I only wish I did.
Yeah.
But I'm sure of this much. Either he met with foul play, or else he'll turn up very soon. There was nothing supernatural involved.
Well, maybe so. Anyway, after he disappeared, there were those two holdups. Then last week we had that mine cave-in.
Those two holdups weren't pulled by any ghosts. They were pulled by some gunman who was very much alive. And if you ask me, that cave-in was caused by sabotage. Probably by that mine hand we fired for drinking.
Zona had just finished speaking when an excited mine hand poked his head into the tent.
Oh, boss.
What's wrong, Jake?
It's the ghost. I just heard him again.
The ghost?
Yeah, that's right. The Dead Dutchman. I just heard him tapping again down in number 4 gallery.
Come on, Slocum. I intend to get to the bottom of this.
All right.
A few moments later, Zona and Slocum, together with a mine hand called Jake, arrived in number 4 gallery.
I don't hear any tapping.
So help me, I heard it with my own 2 ears. There it is. Now, do you believe me?
Yes, I do believe you. Slocum, where can it possibly be coming from?
Don't ask me.
Oh, there must be some kind of a hollow space back there.
You can take my word for it, Miss Howard. That wall's as solid as the Rock of Gibraltar.
The Dead Dutchman, that's who it is. When he starts tapping, it means trouble.
When Zona Howard returned to the company tent, she found a man named Martin Lee waiting for her. Lee was a smooth-talking gambler and mining promoter from Selkirk.
Hello there, Miss Howard.
Oh, it's you. I wondered whose team that was outside.
I just came out from town to see how you were getting along.
Very thoughtful of you. Won't you sit down?
Thank you. Miss Howard, I don't want to seem nosy, but it's no secret that the Dead Dutchman mine's in a bad way.
Really?
I know you've spent a lot of money in developing the mine. Then with all these bad breaks you've had lately, I understand you've gone rather deeply in debt. You may even lose the mine.
May I ask what all this is leading up to?
Well, I was merely going to suggest that I'd be glad to help out with a loan. You could pay me back at your own convenience.
Oh, thank you. But I believe I could manage all right without your help.
You know, Miss Howard, I wish I knew why you dislike me so much.
Believe me, Mr. Lee, I have no feeling toward you of any kind, either of like or dislike.
Well, perhaps we should get better acquainted.
I'm afraid that's out of the question.
In other words, you're still in love with young Drexel.
Frank Drexel and I are engaged to be married.
You can't very well marry a man who's disappeared, can you, Miss Howard? Or should I say, a man who's absconded?
If you're implying that Frank made off with that gold shipment he was carrying, the idea's ridiculous. But that gold dust belonged to him as much as it did to me. So why should he steal his own property?
I wouldn't know about that, Miss Howard. But I do know this. It's downright foolish for a beautiful girl like you to spend her time pining for someone
There's
who's
really
not
no need to continue this conversation any longer, Mr. Lee.
Very well, if that's how you feel. But personally, I think you're making a big mistake. May I drive you into town on my sled?
No, thanks. Slocum is taking me into town this afternoon on my own sled.
Then I'll be saying goodbye. In the meantime, my offer of help still stands.
It was later that same day. Sergeant Preston had come to Selkirk on the trail of an escaped outlaw named Bat Nelson and was making inquiries at all the cafes and stores around town. One of the places he visited was the Gold Nugget Cafe. The bartender greeted him.
Howdy, Sergeant Preston. What can I do for you?
Looking for an escaped outlaw named Bat Nelson.
Pat Nelson? Say, I've heard plenty about him.
Here's a handbill with a picture of Nelson. Take a look at it.
Sure. By thunder. He's a tough-looking cuss, ain't he?
Just about the worst criminal in the territory. You seen him?
Not that I recollect offhand. Why, you think he's here in Selkirk?
I'm sure of it, Frank. I've been trailing him ever since he broke jail in Whitehorse.
That a fact. Well, like I say, I ain't seen him so far, but I'll sure keep my eyes peeled.
Do that. In the meantime, I'm going to post a couple of these handbills around the cafe.
Sure, go right ahead.
A man standing at the end of the bar had been listening to the conversation, apparently with only casual interest. The man was Martin Lee. As Sergeant Preston turned away, he summoned the bartender.
Hey, barkeep. How much to owe you?
Well, let me see. That'll be $1.50.
Here. Keep the change.
Thanks. You going so soon, Mr. Lee?
Yeah. I've got business to attend to.
When Sergeant Preston left the Gold Nugget Cafe, he returned to the local office of the Mounted Police. There he found Constable Joe Clark speaking to an attractive young woman. Constable Clark introduced the sergeant.
Miss Howard, this is Sergeant Preston.
Glad to meet
How do
you,
you do,
Sergeant.
Miss Howard?
Miss Howard's part owner of a mine near town, Sergeant. She's bringing in a large shipment of gold tomorrow, so she came to ask for police protection. I told her that I'd go along and guard the shipment, unless you have some other orders for me, Sergeant.
Why, no, it's all right with me, Joe. What's the name of your mine, Miss Howard?
The Dead Dutchman. No doubt you've heard of it.
Yes, I have. According to legend, it's supposed to be haunted, isn't it?
Yes. The original owner was a Dutch prospector named Peter Zyder. He was found murdered by hostile Indians. And now his ghost is supposed to haunt the mine.
What about the curse?
Well, the mine is supposed to bring doom to everyone who owns it.
Oh, I hope you don't believe that.
Of course not. It's just a silly superstition. The only trouble is that...
That what?
Well, so far the curse has held true. First there was Peter Zyder himself. Then my father and his partner were killed in a mine explosion. That's how Frank Drexel and I happened to inherit the mine. Then, a few weeks ago, Frank disappeared.
Disappeared? How'd that happen?
He was bringing a shipment of gold dust to the bank here in town. Just what I'll be doing tomorrow. He left the mine early one morning, but he never arrived in Selkirk.
Oh, well, it's a mighty interesting story, Miss Howard. However, with Constable Clark on guard, I don't think you need worry about any supernatural curses.
Meanwhile, Martin Lee had gone to a small cabin on the outskirts of town. As he entered the cabin, a burly, scar-faced man looked up from the newspaper which he had been reading. He was Bat Nelson, the escaped outlaw. Lee spoke sharply.
I thought you told me you got rid of Sergeant Preston.
Sure I did. I fixed it so he burned to death in a forest fire down on Roaring Creek.
Like fun he did. I just saw him at the Gold Nugget Cafe.
What's it?
And what's more, he's looking for you and putting up handbills all over town with your picture on them.
Holy smoke. In that case, I better clear out of Selkirk pronto, huh? Hey, who's that?
Keep out of sight while I answer the door.
The man who had knocked was Zona Howard's mine foreman, John Slocum.
Oh. It's you, Slocum. Come on in.
Hi, Slocum. Howdy, Bat.
What's up?
Plenty. Zona Howard is bringing a big shipment in from the mine tomorrow. Around $25,000 worth of gold dust.
25 grand?
Yeah.
That's enough to pay off her debts and put the mine in the clear.
That's right. I figured you might like to know about it.
You figured right. Bat.
Yeah?
Maybe you'd like to stick around long enough to pull a little job before you hit the trail again.
Yeah. I think maybe I would.
The following morning, the gold shipment left the mine. Constable Clark was traveling in the lead. Next came John Slocum, driving the freight sled on which the gold dust had been loaded. Zona Howard brought up the rear, driving her own basket sled and four-dog team. The group was traveling along a winding mountain trail when suddenly a shot rang out from behind a group of boulders. Constable Clark fell across his sled, and a second later, the voice of Bat Nelson shouted out,
"Up your team!
Ho, ho! Ho! Ho!
Yeah, that's better. Now you can start unloading that gold you can. And make it snappy, I'll give you just what I gave the money."
We'll continue our adventure in just a moment. What a hit they're making.
Yes, fellas and girls, the thrilling new cutout models to build Sergeant Preston's Yukon Trail are a wow.
Actually, 59 unusual models at no extra cost.
Offered without delay by delicious Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat. The king-size cereals shot from guns.
You can start immediately with these swell models to follow the exciting new series of adventures now on this program.
You can follow Sergeant Preston and King down the Yukon Trail in hot pursuit of Bat Nelson, the most dangerous and cunning outlaw in the Yukon.
For instance, you get an exciting model setup of the Dead Dutchman mining camp in today's exciting story.
The mysterious haunted mine itself. The company tent, the dog team and freight sled that were carrying the $25,000 worth of gold dust just stolen.
These Yukon models are so unusual. There's even scenery and interiors.
The interior of the Dead Dutchman mine.
The freight sled and dog team can be hitched and moved around.
These Yukon Trail models are bigger, easier to put together.
And they don't cost a single extra penny.
These models come on 8 special new packages of Quaker puffed wheat and Quaker puffed rice, the famous cereals shot from guns.
Actually exploded up to 8 times normal size to make them bigger and better tasting.
And full of tender crispness and delicious nut-like flavor.
So as soon as you get delicious Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat, yes, today or tomorrow, you can start to build your Yukon Trail.
Every package is clearly numbered on the front.
There are 8 different packages in all.
And the Dead Dutchman mining camp models are on package number 4.
So hurry and get your number 4 package of swell-tasting, nourishing Quaker puffed wheat or Quaker puffed rice immediately.
Remember, there's nothing to send in. No money, box tops, or coupons.
Your grocer now has these Yukon Trail cutout models that come only on Quaker puffed wheat and Quaker puffed rice.
Be sure you have packages number 1, 2, 3, and 4 to start building your Yukon Trail right now.
Now to continue. Sergeant Preston was seated in the mounted police office at Selkirk when Zona Howard brought word of the